This is November 17th, 1969. The occasion is the Oklahoma Hall of Fame luncheon. I'm interviewing Dr. Edwin Parker of Ardmore, Oklahoma. The interviewer is Hilda L. Lauber. Dr. Parker, you have already been initiated into the Hall of Fame, have you not?
Yes, ma'am.
When was this?
About 4 years ago.
All right, can you tell me a little bit about your background, where you were born, your parentage?
My parents were missionaries. I was born in Cienfuegos, Cuba. I went to a mission school until I was 12. And since then, I lived in North Carolina, Texas, and Tennessee. That is up until the time I finished college and went into the ministry.
Where did you go to college?
I went to 3 different colleges because there was a depression on and I had to hunt a job, and I went to school where I could find work. I went first to Southwestern University, a wonderful Presbyterian school in Memphis, Tennessee. I went then to Asbury College in Wilmore, Kentucky, and then to the University of Kentucky at Lexington.
Have you always been a Methodist?
I have always been a Methodist. My father was a Methodist before me.
Where were you baptized?
In Cienfuegos, Cuba.
And your father baptized you?
He did. He also married me and baptized my children.
Is he still living?
No, he is not.
Is there anything in particular that influenced you become a minister?
That would be hard to say. I think mostly the fact that I admired my father so greatly and just always felt that I wanted to be like him.
Well, that's marvelous for a son to feel that way about his father. After you finished seminary, where did you go?
I finished seminary at the University of Denver, and at that time I was pastor in the city of Denver. When I left there, I came to Goodwell, Oklahoma, where I taught religion at Panhandle A&M and served as pastor of the Methodist Church.
Were you married at this time?
Yes, ma'am. I was married and had a daughter, 5 years old.
Can you tell me something about living in the Panhandle this time?
Those are the greatest people in all the world. I was out there in the Dust Bowl days. We made our own fun. And every evening about 8:30, neighbors would call around until we got 2 or 3 tables of bridge together. We'd play bridge a little while, have dessert and coffee, then everybody would go home. Goodwell was a community of neighbors, and I met some outstanding people. I remember quite a few of them in Guyman, Boise City, Goodwell, out through the Panhandle Strip.
Is Goodwell still in existence today?
It is. The school has grown. It's doing a great job, and I think the town is larger than it was when I was there.
Has the Methodist religion continued to grow in the Panhandle?
Yes, it has. It has grown greatly throughout Oklahoma.
How many churches were in that area when you first went there?
I couldn't quite tell you. I don't know.
But you feel certain that it has grown. Where were you married?
I was married at El Paso, Texas. You see, I've lived almost everywhere.
Tell us something about the places where you've lived.
Cienfuegos, Cuba for 12 years, and then we moved to Asheville, North Carolina because my mother had developed tuberculosis. and we moved to El Paso, Texas for the same reason, for the climate. Then we went to Memphis, Tennessee. When I left Memphis, Tennessee, I joined the conference, the New Mexico annual conference of the Methodist Church, and served churches in New Mexico, Denver, Colorado, and then came to Oklahoma.
What bishops did you serve under?
Bishop Sam R. Hay first, Bishop Ivan Lee Holt next, Bishop Charles C. Selectman after that, Bishop W. Angie Smith for 24 years, and now Bishop Paul W. Millhouse.
How long have you been in the ministry?
39 years. In case you're wondering, I went into the ministry when I was 21 years of age.
And you are now?
I wouldn't tell for the world.
That's your privilege. In your ministry, what has given you the most pleasure and satisfaction?
I think my relationships with people. My job isn't to preach a sermon on Sunday morning or to get together the items that go into making up a report. My job is basically to help people, and I think helping people is the thing that has given me the most joy in my ministry.
What age group do you particularly like to work with?
Well, what age group do I like best? I would say tiny children, little babies. I'm crazy about them. I guess when it comes to working with one group or another, I couldn't express a preference. I've always served in a church where we had a great many young people. I've never known this generation gap. I guess I'm a little juvenile myself, but I've never known a generation gap.
What kind of a youth program do you have?
We have a tremendous youth program. We have a youth minister who is older than most youth ministers. We make enough money available to the youth to put on the kind of a program they want to put on, and realizing that young people want to do things their own way, we let them plan their own program, their own recreation, and handle their own budget. For instance, they have dances at the church. They take trips to Six Flags, to the Oklahoma State Fair, or to see missionary projects that they would like to see. They carry on a tremendous ministry to shut-in people. Last spring, they made a birdhouse for every shut-in in our church, and there are 114 of them. And the young people took a birdhouse to each shut-in and then put that birdhouse where the shut-in could see it from his or her window. Our young people sing in the choir at the early service and in the choir at the Sunday night service. And I will promise you this, at our church, a large percentage of the worshipers at any service will be young people in the high school age.
What change have you noticed in your parishioners' attitude over the years? This is from the first years of ministry to now.
They are much more lenient in dealing with the minister's family. They used to think that the minister ought to fit a stereotyped sort of a picture. Now they allow a minister and his family to be normal, natural, everyday human beings, and they make allowance for our faults and weaknesses and understand them. That's a great difference. Another difference is that people used to stress doctrinal things. To be right, you had to be doctrinally right. We're thinking more now about being sweet, helpful, Christ-like, And men no longer ask, do you believe this or do you believe that? The thing they're interested in is, does your life help? I think those two things I have noticed more than anything else as differences that have occurred in the last few years.
You mentioned your family. Do you have children?
I have a daughter who married a Methodist minister. They have a son, 11, and an adopted daughter, 5. Everybody tells me she looks like me. That pleases me greatly. I have a son who is 5 years younger than my daughter, was admitted to the bar about 2 months ago. He is married and has 2 beautiful little daughters, 7 and 3.
And do they look like you too?
I'm afraid to tell you, but I like to think they do.
Fine.
I'm partial to girls, incidentally.
You're a proud grandfather.
So I have 3 granddaughters.
Dr. Parker, when you left the Panhandle, where did you go from there?
I came to Oklahoma City to serve as secretary of the Conference Board of Education, which was largely young people's work, and I also taught at Oklahoma City University.
What subject?
Religion, as I recall, mostly New Testament.
For how long a period?
4 years.
And then where did you go?
I went to Clinton, Oklahoma, and loved it.
All right, from Clinton, Oklahoma, where did you go?
I went to Ponca City for 6 years, and I love Ponca City too. We built an educational building there that is still in use and is a beautiful structure.
What church was this?
First Methodist.
And then where did you go?
I went to Odessa, Texas, which was and probably is still the fastest growing small city in the Southwest. It was a type of situation where if you didn't take in 10 new members a Sunday, you thought you were slipping terribly. The church doubled in size while I was there.
How wonderful. I hope it's still doing that.
It is. Odessa's still growing.
Where did you go from Odessa?
I came to the Oklahoma City District as district superintendent.
What did this job entail?
Well, you're really district missionary, helping the small churches because the larger churches can get along without you. And you are a counselor to the ministers of all of the churches in your district. Of course, you try to help them work out problems, you try to give advice, you try to help them, but you're really a district helper.
Where did you, what was your next position?
I was pastor of the First Methodist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma for 1 year.
Mm-hmm. And you moved on to?
First Methodist Church, Ardmore, where I've been for 10 years.
You must love it there.
I do love it there. I think those are the sweetest and greatest people I have ever known. We've built a chapel, put in an all-electric kitchen, modernized the buildings, and now we're redecorating the sanctuary and refurnishing it, which is a tremendous job. But the thing that I think more of than the physical improvements is the fact that we have grown in membership. In the 10 years that I've been there, we have taken in about 2,300 new members. We've lost quite a few, but our membership total has increased considerably. And we've taken care of such things as missionary obligations.
Do you happen to have a golden age group?
We have a tremendous golden age group. Counting the people in the rest homes, there are about 200 people in it. And we go out of our way to try to take care of them. One thing we have done is to install an elevator so that the old people can get in and out of the church easily. They meet at the church twice a month for lunch, hobby groups, and recreation. And they enjoy this type of thing very much. Many of them are infirm, and we have to have one adult for each old person because they have to have help getting around. Then there are a number in the rest homes who cannot get out at all. I would say that every person in a rest home is visited on an average of twice a week from the church. We do that because so many of them don't have any relatives in Ardmore, and we try to take care of these old people. Now let me stress this. My church at Ardmore is a service church. For instance, we have two ministers. We do not accept fees for funerals or weddings. We're there to do what we can to help people. Our membership tries to be the kind of a church people would like to be a part of, and to be that. We not only have to watch our own personal lives, we've got to live helpfully so far as other people are concerned. We have people who give blood to the blood bank. We hold it until it's needed. We've got men who can be called on at a moment's notice to serve as pallbearers for some of these older people who have no friends. We've got women who will take babies if a mother who doesn't have relatives near gets sick and needs somebody to take care of her child or children. We have a church that is tremendously well set up to help people in the community.
Sounds as though you have a terrific volunteer group. It seems like the whole congregation would be considered volunteers for something.
I would say that just about half of the congregation, and that is a tremendous percentage, is on a list to help with some type of volunteer work whenever they are called on, and we don't make useless work for them. But when we have something worthwhile, we call on them, and they do it gladly.
What is your membership?
A little over 3,300.
How many services do you have each Sunday?
3. An early worship service, a regular or traditional service, and a night service.
What do you think of the supposedly new trend that religion is going through now?
To what do you refer? To the contemporary worship? Is that?
Yes.
I have been to several contemporary worship services. I prefer the traditional for myself. In my own situation, I try to use what suits my people best. As a minister, I am the executive officer of the church, but the church belongs to the people, and I work under their direction, and I do what they want done. They, in my present situation, like the traditional service, and as long as that is what they want, that is what we will follow. On the other hand, if people want a modern, contemporary style of worship, I have nothing against it. I just say that in my present situation, it would not be accepted.
What if someone came to you and said, the organ is rather old-fashioned music in the church. Let's have the guitars, the trombones, and so forth. What would your answer be?
Well, our young people have had that sort of thing and have enjoyed it. If they came and wanted it in the regular service, very frankly, I would take it up with my administrative board and be governed by what they wanted to do. That administrative board is made up of a little over 100 people. Some of them are elderly. Most of them are in the middle age bracket. Some of them are very young. They give you a good cross-section of the church, and their judgment is very, very good.
In other words, with the three services that you have on Sunday, it should meet everyone's needs.
It should. Now, the two morning services are identical, except for the fact that a high school choir sings at the first one. Now, we have not had any demand for a contemporary form of worship, so we do not have one.
Would you say that your church is a family church, or is it a church where mother brings the youngsters to church, drops them off for Sunday school, and picks them up later?
I would say it's a family church. It has an unusually high percentage of young people worshiping and of men worshiping. It is a church where the families come together.
Very good. Well, we have covered your professional life very thoroughly. You certainly must have some hobbies, some outside interest. Would you care to tell us about that?
Well, my main hobby, I guess, is traveling. In the last few years, we have been to every country in Central and South America. We've been to Europe, the British Isles, the Scandinavian countries, Russia, Poland, the Middle East, and enjoyed it very, very much. Usually I take pictures and show them when I get back. My friends like for me to take trips. I don't know whether they enjoy the pictures or not.
What part has your wife played in your ministry, Dr. Parker?
A tremendously important part. In our peculiar philosophy, a minister's wife is a private individual. She is not supposed to help her husband with his work, certainly not to do it for him, and she is not at the beck and call of the community or even the church membership. She is the minister's wife, and as the minister's wife, she makes a lovely home. Certainly she entertains people. She takes food when there's illness or when there are deaths, and she takes care of neighbors and friends' children. But she's not on call by the community or church because she's the minister's wife. She does these things for her friends because she wants to, just as any other private individual would do them. And she feels free to live in the community and to take part in her interests outside of her local church, of our church, as she wishes. I think that a wife who is normal and healthy and happy and not burdened down by a multitude of duties which no woman should be asked to perform is the greatest help to a minister in all the world.
How many years have you been married?
We have been married 39 years.
Wonderful. Glorious years, I assume.
Yes, they've been good years.
Now I'm going to ask you to reminisce a little bit over your past from the very beginning of your life. No, let's say your ministry. I think each church possibly has its own character or personality. Can you think of any incidences that happened that you would like to tell us about? Either very funny or maybe a tragedy.
Well, if you're thinking about things that are funny, when we started out, we began to save money to travel, because in those first years, salaries were very, very low. But we saved a little bit toward the day when we could take a trip together. A number of things have happened on these trips. One that I remember with a great deal of pleasure was when I decided to bring back some Jordan River water to use in baptisms, and I thought I'd bring back some for my preacher friends too. I had some plastic bottles to put the water in, and a friend on the trip lent me a White Horse bottle. In case you don't know what White Horse is, it is a Scotch whiskey bottle. We filled it up with Jordan River water, and when we got back to New York City, and the customs official was looking through the suitcase, he came to the White Horse bottle. He asked, "What's in that bottle?" And I told him, "Water from the River Jordan." His response was immediate. He said, "The hell you say." Sure, I've laughed about that a good deal. I laughed about once when we were in Russia, and I didn't want to tell anybody I was a minister. That's murder. If you tell them you're a minister, they cry on your shoulder, they criticize everything you do, and they expect you to settle their disputes. People kept asking what I did, and one retired college professor, who was really a dear old gentleman, insisted that I tell him what I did. I said, "I don't do anything. I'm living on my wife's first husband's money." I thought it was hilarious. I didn't realize that it had gotten through the group until I heard one woman say to her husband, "I don't see why you're so sensitive about my first husband's money. Ed here brags about living on Mildred's first husband's money." Oh, well, we've had a lot of fun together.
All right, can you tell me about a humorous incident in one of your churches?
Well, there have been so very, very many of them. I hardly know which one to tell about. Frankly, I'm inclined to see the funny side of almost everything. And I guess it would be terrible if I didn't. I get a tremendous lot of fun out of living. To pick out one right at this moment and recall it, I can't.
I see. Have you ever been in charge of a church that has met disaster, fire, tornado?
I have been very, very fortunate. The only church disaster I have ever had was a situation in which some of the people got mad at each other and got mad at me. But no fires, no tornadoes. And yet I've almost always been involved in a building program.
Dr. Parker, I know that after your busy life that you have plans for retirement. Would you care to tell us about them?
Yes, I do, and I'm looking forward to it. I think that those years of retirement ought to be happy and rich. I'm going to go to church every Sunday morning. I'm not going to read a scripture or pray. That'll be the pastor's business. I'm not going to criticize him or get in his way. I'm just going to be a Christian and try to be a gentleman. I'm going to go fishing whenever I want to, and I love to fish. I've taught more minnows to swim than almost any preacher you ever saw. And I'm going to travel. I think I'll get a camper and get around this country a good deal. I'd like to go abroad again a time or two. And I've got 4 grandchildren. I'm sort of looking forward to taking on some summer trips. I've taken them on some already, but I hope to take them on some more. Retirement means to me that I'll have the time to do things I've always wanted to do and have had to just sandwich in between duties. and I'll be able to give plenty of time to them now. And incidentally, you've been a wonderful interviewer.
Well, thank you very much. I have enjoyed this immensely. This interview will go into the legendary library at Oklahoma Christian College.
I believe I'll come listen to it sometime.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, my niece had a tape in her house. And one time I came in and they began to ask me all kinds of questions, and I just talked very freely, and then pretty soon they played that tape back and I sounded